on AM 560, The Answer.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson. Only the biggest stories, only the biggest guests, and only the biggest opinions. This is AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. If you'll indulge me, I want to read a little excerpt from a commentary I penned that we'll post at American Greatness Today, where I podcast, on Trump and his statement earlier this week on abortion. So first, Trump left office after exhausting his appeals to the legislative and judicial branches. Now Trump is deferring to the will of the people of the several states as expressed through their duly elected state officials when it comes to the legal treatment of abortion in post-Roe America. Trump is the strangest of all iterations of tyrants, one who believes in federalism, as he acknowledged when he invoked the Bill of Rights, the 10th Amendment specifically, in response to criticisms from some pro-lifers of his position. It's unusual for a dictator to concede limits to his power. But Trump's position on abortion is simply a political compromise in order to advance his electoral chances in November, right? Yeah, perhaps. So in other words, he is tailoring his view on abortion to secure the votes he needs from the people to win an election fairly. Again, it's quite the reluctant dictator who seeks the consent of the governed. I say this, just that excerpt, just because of the Trump, the tyrant, Trump, the tyrant who won't dictate to the people on abortion, whereas the left is all for federalizing, centralizing the issue and dictating to the country. And I'm sorry, who's the tyrant again? Whereas Trump is pushing back against sort of an open-ended commitment to the surveillance state per his pushing some House Republicans to vote against Section 702 reauthorization under FISA and reminding people of the FISA abuses that directly impacted him. And I would add the FISA abuses that have been documented and conceded by Christopher Wray and the FBI in terms of illegal searches of Americans, abuses there. So, and it's the left and the Wall Street Journal editorial board that suggests anybody who doesn't essentially write these blank checks to agencies that have disgraced themselves, like the FBI, have demonstrated that they are terribly politicized. They're the threats to democracy, to a free society. Right? Trump, he's that threat to a free society. Just remarkable, particularly since he's a known quantity. You may remember he was president for 4 years. It wasn't that long ago, but people have short memories. Incredibly short memories. I think conveniently short memories. I've said this many times. All the bloviations and cringeworthy rhetorical moments aside, terribly conventional politician when it comes to the actual give and take of politics. And there are some real authoritarian threats afoot. And one was documented thanks to Elon Musk and the reporters he entrusted to tell the story, like Matt Taibbi and Michael Schellenberger and others. The Twitter files. This is the subject of the Murthy v. Missouri case pending before the Supreme Court. And the government, the federal government, their unconstitutional use of cutouts to suppress speech through third-party social media platforms that they couldn't suppress directly themselves. And now we see the same thing happening in Brazil. And the only reason there's a fight is because Elon Musk owns X. Because otherwise, these other social media companies, as we saw in this country, go along to get along because, well, it's nice to have the federal government backing your play when you need them. If you're a global company,
it's their coworkers.
And so, where do things stand in Brazil with Elon Musk, and what exactly is the involvement, if any, because it's been alleged, of those same censorious agencies in our government that have meddled in the last several elections in this country? Here's what Elon Musk's latest report is from Brazil in terms of what they're threatening if he doesn't comply.
They have threatened to cut off X entirely from Brazil. They've also threatened to arrest our employees, and they have applied a $20,000 a day fine.
But Bolsonaro, the previous president that was ousted in sort of in similar fashion to Trump, curiously, he was the real threat to some sort of small d democratic form of government in Brazil, not Lula in that Supreme Court that is putting the arm on X. This is not an endorsement of everything Bolsonaro said and did, nor is it an endorsement of everything that Trump said and did. It's just a description of the landscape and who has behaved in a way that should be more pause for concern. For more on all this, we're pleased to be joined by Professor Daniel Klein, Professor of Economics at George Mason University, author of Misinformation is a Word We Use to Shut You Up. Yes. Professor Klein, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Glad to be here.
So what about that situation in Brazil and I mean, any comments you have to the extent you'd like on whether or not there are American fingerprints on what is happening at the what the Brazilian government is attempting to do to X?
I think you described the situation well, and I think what's happening in Brazil is happening, well, I wouldn't say everywhere, but here in America, obviously in a lot of countries like Canada and Europe. The censorship, I think, is the other side of the propaganda. You need to see this whole tyrannical effort as involving those two things necessarily. So without the censorship, the propaganda, the big lies, would be ripped to shreds. So it's very important that they censor the people who would dissent from, criticize, expose the big lies. And that seems to be what these people are about. I think they have CCP envy. I think they envy the CCP for being able to weaponize everything to basically criminalize the opposition and achieve one-party authoritarian rule. I think that's the dream of the left, whether they kind of consciously realize it or not. I'm not talking about the Democrat next door. I'm talking about the leaders, as it were, of what is now the Democrat operation.
Well, to believe that they don't realize it is to say that they are just so committed. They are just so confident about the righteousness of their cause that they haven't even contemplated that in a free society you're supposed to allow dissenting opinions, and I should be confident enough in my belief system, my argument, that I'll persuade people to my view of things, because that's how it works. This is like sort of like a grade school civics lesson about living in a free society and about our representative republic. So it strains the bounds of credulity, I guess, for me to believe that they don't understand the implications of what they're doing.
They seem to get the signals of what to be doing and saying and enforcing from above, as it were. And they just, don't think critically about it and don't realize the hypocrisy and inconsistency of what they're saying and doing with respect to things they otherwise, or just, a few years ago would say, for example, about free speech. I don't think they are. I think most of them are not well aware of how bad what they're doing is. And they delude themselves. So I agree that there's a great deal of self-deceit, delusion involved. And misinformation, the word, their use of the word misinformation is a stratagem to put across this censorship, because it misrepresents what it is they're really objecting to. What they're objecting to is not properly called misinformation. It would be more apt for them to say that they are opposing wrongthink, okay? things that they don't like. And it's not proper to express it as an informational matter. Information is a narrow part of knowledge. It's a narrow dimension of knowledge. The wider dimensions are interpretation, judgment, and it's in those wider dimensions where the objection actually lies. Like I say, it's really the broader concept of something like wrongthink that they're feeling. They don't like, someone says the virus came from a lab, and they say that's misinformation to say that the virus came from a lab, or they used to. And it's not an informational matter. Information is a flatter notion in epistemics and in normal language. Like when we're misinformed, we're ready to admit the correction. Like if I go into the supermarket and I ask the clerk, where's the peanut butter? And he says it's in aisle 6. And I go to aisle 6 and I don't find it. I look around, I find it in aisle 9. He misinformed me. And I say, hey, I found it. It was in aisle 9. He says, oh, sorry about that. That's what misinformation is. So it's really about, so they're putting across their censorship by representing the people that they are censoring as committing simple falsehoods, so cut and dried falsehoods. And, we all oppose cut and dried falsehoods, right? And so that makes it look kind of innocent on the censor's part, like to shut up people who are making cut and dried falsehoods. But it's not cut and dried falsehoods. What they're actually censoring is larger issues of judgment about who to trust, whose interpretations to take seriously, what to make of the situation. And that's what free speech and a free society is about, for us to sort through different points of view, different interpretations, and judgments over interpretations. So the misinformation label they use is a strategy to censor.
Well, shouldn't certain things be censored on social media? Like, remember the Tide Pod Challenge, and in your article in the Wall Street Journal, you talked about Supreme Court Justice KBJ, Katina Brown Jackson, about a hypothetical that she proposed about a teen challenge where it involved teens jumping out of windows.
I'm not saying that the government shouldn't take steps to maybe try to suppress certain things. My objection is that the justice there called it this information. I think she should say this content, this material, these images, these videos, because it's not just like what people jumping out of windows. What is the information? What informational content is there in the video which valorizes jumping out of windows? That it's cool, like suppose you take it as saying it's cool to jump out of third floor windows. That's not an informational matter. It's a larger matter of interpretation, judgment, aesthetics, even, like what's cool, right? And so it's just wrong to kind of call it information as the justice did. And that's all part of this stratagem on their part to make it look like what they're doing is innocent. We just want to rid the world of these cut and dried mistruths, misinformation, when really what they're doing is they're censoring what they don't like. You see?
Yeah.
So it's not that I don't want to say the government should never do something or whatever. The point is that we got to be onto this misinformation stratagem. It's a censorship stratagem.
Right, because it's a catch-all. Yeah, you're right. You just throw everything that, as you said, you just throw everything that you don't like, you don't want to hear, you don't want other people to hear because it's a dangerous word or a dangerous idea, into the misinformation bucket, and it's nice and clean that way.
The honest way for them to do it is, what you say is wrongthink. We think it's bad. We're shutting you up. And if they were honest that way, it would be obvious that they're just censoring different judgments about the world.
Yeah, too obvious, which is why they're not that straightforward about it. Professor Daniel Klein, professor of economics, George Mason University, author of Misinformation is a Word We Use to Shut You Up. Professor Klein, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Connect with Dan and Amy using the AM 560 mobile app. Download it today at 560theanswer.com/mobile.
Did you and your family lose Illinois Medicaid and need health coverage? Check this out. You may be eligible to enroll in a low-cost health plan at healthcare.gov. With the new law, 4 out of 5 customers can find a plan for $10 or less per month with financial help. Healthcare.gov offers quality plans that cover doctor visits, prescriptions, emergency care, and more. Healthcare.gov is here for you. Enroll today for coverage